This ball is hit hard and gone. There's a triple play.
No, he did.
Long run, Donaldson. What a play. Welcome to Toronto. Talk about these guys are ready for the playoffs.
Hello, baseball fans. Welcome to Taking Flight. I'm Lance Phillips.
And I'm Rodney Heemstra. 2015 was a great season for the Blue Jays. Of course, the pinnacle moment was Jose Bautista's Game 5 home run against the Rangers, but there are plenty of other great moments as well. Lance, what's something else that stands out for you?
Well, Rodney, I was there when Ryan Goins hit that 11th inning walk-off home run against the Indians, and for a guy not known for his power, he really solidified that this team was as complete as any.
Yeah, for me, it was Russell Martin's 3-run shot in the rubber match game against the Yankees in September, really solidifying that this team was going to win the AL East.
Well, it was a great year for the Blue Jays. Now let's take a look at some highlights from an incredible 2015.
Deep drive to left field. Pilar at the wall, at the track, jumps and... Oh,
No, he didn't. No, he did.
He's got it. He'll get there, dives in and caught it. Oh, what a play. Here comes Donaldson home, and he's safe. Grand slam,
After finally having their team reach the postseason, Toronto fans were faced with potential immediate disappointment when the Blue Jays dropped the first 2 games at Rogers Center to the Rangers. However, after a couple of wins in Texas, the Bluebirds returned to the nest for a historic Game 5. Ross Coughlin takes us through what was potentially the most dramatic game of all time.
Game 5 took on almost mythical proportions. Marcus Stroman, as the prodigal son, got the start, returning from a horrendous knee injury in spring training to seemingly be better than he ever was before. Through 6 innings, he was electric.
3rd consecutive strikeout for Marcus Stroman.
The defense behind him was stellar, making important play after important play. Edwin Encarnacion, almost the forgotten man in this game, did what he does best and sent a ball into the Rogers Center bleachers, tying the game at 2s and setting the scene for the wildest inning in Blue Jays history.
The ball actually hit Shu's bat as Martin went to throw it back to the pitcher.
Or if he threw it and it hit off the back of his bat, he's got to score.
And here he scores.
That's a run score.
There is almost a sense of Murphy's Law amongst Toronto sports fans in the 21st century. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. And all it took was a misplaced throw back to the pitcher for Jays fans to expect the worst. Scenes got ugly at the Rogers Center as fans thought their dream season was being robbed from them. However, what happened next wouldn't have been so sweet if it wasn't for the bitterness experienced a mere half inning before. The luck started to shift Toronto's way. The Rangers cracked under the pressure of the raucous Rogers Center crowd, committing 3 errors in the inning. And then, the Blue Jays leader stepped up to the plate.
The 1-1 from Tyson. Batista with a drive. Deep left field. No doubt about it.
Blue Jays fans and players celebrated into the night, the bat flip putting to bed 22 years of misery. As the fans flooded out onto Blue Jays Way and Front Street after Game 5, they were chanting Bautista's name. It was loud and clear. Jose, 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 Jose had written his name into Toronto sports folklore. From Toronto, Ross Coughlin.
The Blue Jays cruised into the 2015 postseason, leading the majors in runs scored, RBIs, and home runs. Just a few of the factors contributing to the team's scorching hot end to the regular season. And as our panel explains, the Jays have reason to believe that their production on the field won't miss a beat.
Thanks, Ian Duffy, joined by Stephanie Deletto and a couple of Robs, Rob Conway, Rob Brandel. This Jays team, when you think about them, the #1 offense in baseball last season, maybe one of the best offenses baseball has ever seen, but they sneakily put together one of the best defenses in the majors. A lot of people forget that they were 51 and 51 until they made a couple moves to shore things up on that side of things. You know, last season was a big question mark heading in. This season, where do you guys feel about it heading into opening day?
Well, I mean, those question mark scenes that you're talking about are in left field and at short and at first base. And that's what Alex Anthopoulos addressed at the trade deadline, adding Ben Revere, adding Troy Tulowitzki, and then that allowed Chris Colabello to move over to first base, share the time with Justin Smoke. That situation is here again. I mean, other than the fact that you remove Ben Revere and you have Michael Saunders that moves in, but there aren't those question marks moving in. This team for sure defensively is better today than it was this time last season.
Yeah, I agree with Rob. You have to have a lot of confidence in this Jays defense going into the season. They're so versatile. Up the middle, they're very strong. They have Russell Martin, Goins on second, Pilar, who's insane, and he proved that to us last year. He's in the outfield. And then you have shortstop Troy Tulowitzki, who's really, really solid. So I have a lot of confidence in this Jays team going into the season.
You know, and Steph, I can't disagree with you. You two both very confident, but I'm looking across the table at a guy who seems to have his doubts.
Yeah, and I have doubts because of their corner outfielders. Jose Bautista, at 35 years old, had the second worst ultimate zone rating of any right fielder in baseball last season. And then in left field, you have Michael Saunders, who missed almost all of last season, played in just 9 games because of knee injuries. So we don't know what he's going to look like this year.
Rob, you have your doubts, but you've got to admit this team very deep at multiple positions across the diamond. Which position maybe are you guys the most confident?
Well, for me, it's definitely shortstop and Troy Tulowitzki. That's a huge upgrade when it comes to Jose Reyes at the beginning of last season. I mean, he has the #1 fielding percentage of all time at shortstop. All time. I mean, there have been some really fantastic players who play that position over the years. So definitely when it comes to shortstop, that's a huge upgrade. Then you have Ryan Goins. He could probably play shortstop on any other team in the American League, and that strength up the middle and that depth is what's really going to help the defense this year.
And you talk about those middle infielders, you also have to keep in mind they've got Darwin Barney coming off the bench. He's won a Gold Glove with the Chicago Cubs. And then Devin Travis is going to be coming back from injury, also a plus defender.
And Darwin Barney's replacing Munenari Kawasaki. And as much as we loved him in the clubhouse, that is a huge upgrade when you're getting a Gold Glover.
I really like the way that first base is looking. You have Colabello and Smoke, a righty and a lefty. They're very versatile in the way they play that position, and they'll be able to rotate through them throughout the season. And then that gives Edwin Encarnacion a break. He played 59 games last season on first base. He won't have to worry about that this year because it is covered.
Well, no doubt the Twitter and Vine community will both miss Mooney. Always good for a soundbite, but as the old adage goes, defense wins championships, and maybe that's what will put the Jays over the top in 2016. Back to you guys.
Stay tuned. For the first time in 28 years, the Blue Jays have themselves an MVP. But can he repeat that feat in 2016? Stay tuned for more Taking Flight. Welcome back. Coming into last season, the Blue Jays had the longest playoff drought in North American professional sports. But thanks to the bringer of rain, Toronto's thirst for a postseason berth was finally quenched. Justin Lacey fills us in now on the off-season of number 20, and his odds of repeating as the AL's number 1.
And now it's Donaldson, second and third, 2 out. Here comes a 2-1. Left side, Moustakas. Royals win the pennant.
Despite taking home a Silver Slugger and American League MVP, it was a long offseason for Josh Donaldson. He took the time to get some perspective on a playoff run that didn't end the way that he wanted it to.
At the end of the day, Kansas City had they had a great team, and we felt that we were we felt like we were able to compete with them and win the series, but they won it. So I mean, at the end of the day, you can't really take anything away from them because I mean they're the world champs.
With a new season about to begin, expectations are sky high, and Donaldson knows it's his job to bring the team together again to make a push for the Fall Classic.
You know, this year is try to get the troops on board early on what the objectives are and you know what our main goals are, and you know I'm looking forward to having another good year.
Blue Jays' new president and CEO Mark Shapiro knows he has one of the league's biggest stars on his club and couldn't be more thrilled about getting to watch what Donaldson brings to the park day in and day out.
That's one of the things that you most look forward to, a guy that has not just the talent, but the drive, the intensity, the fuel to win. A guy that makes other players better by just the way he brings, that level of competitiveness every single day, that relentless approach. There are not many players that have the combination of both talent, skills, and relentlessness that he's got. So I'm excited to watch that from the same dugout rather than across the field, I guess.
There's no denying Josh Donaldson had one of the best seasons in Jays history. From collecting the most All-Star votes the MLB has ever seen to the hardware sitting in his trophy case. But this year, the people of Toronto are hoping that the bringer of rain will become the bringer of rings, and they'll have a third World Series trophy on display here at the Rogers Centre. From Toronto, Justin Lacey.
October 15th was a day unlike any other at the Rogers Centre. That's when Jose Bautista hit his iconic 7th inning go-ahead 3-run shot, followed by the bat flip that echoed from St. John's to Vancouver. Now the Jays open 2016 with AL East title expectations, but plenty of contract negotiations. And in the middle of it, Joey Bats. We're now pleased to be joined by CSM's Cam Durrett. Cam, how do you see Bautista fitting into the club's long-term plans?
Well, hopefully for Bautista, he fits into these plans until retirement. But before anybody gets too far ahead of themselves, whether it's ownership, fans, or Bautista himself, everyone needs to take a collective breath and remember that this season is about to start, and it matters the most. The Jays have a real shot at capturing the AL East title again, not to mention World Series aspirations. Now, if we do look further down the line for Jose Bautista's contract, we have to remember that he loves playing in Toronto. He played for 4 teams in 5 years before joining the Jays, where he's been an all-star the last 6 seasons. So if both sides can come to some sort of agreement, it'll be mutually beneficial for both.
Cam, home run hitters typically lose power as they age, and Bautista turns 36 this year. Should the club have concerns about his health going forward?
Well, it's a big concern for Toronto, and it's a big concern for Toronto fans, but it isn't a concern at all for Jose Bautista. This is a player who's notorious around the MLB for his workout ethic. He hasn't been on the disabled list once since 2013, and in 4 of his last 6 seasons, he's played in at least 149 games. So it's all systems go for Jose Bautista. Now fans are worried about the power, whether he can still hit home runs, but keep this number in mind. He hit 40 jacks last season, which is the most he's hit since 2011.
Production and age aside, should the fans of Toronto feel like the club owes something to their all-star slugger?
Absolutely. This is a city that had such a magical feeling during that postseason run, and at the heart of it all was Jose Bautista. He had arguably 2 of the biggest home runs in franchise history, both at incredibly opportune times. And when he's not flipping his bat or flipping out, he plays with an emotion that this city hasn't seen from any of their sports stars in decades. And as long as Joey Bats gets to continue to eat for free ever since those home runs, it's safe to say that he belongs in Toronto.
Thanks very much, Cam.
Putting together a contending team has always been a challenge. And in this day and age of professional sports, keeping that team together is an even bigger one. Our contract wizards break down for us now who the Blue Jays should extend, wait out, or possibly trade.
Thanks, Rod. I'm Sean Millette, joined by John Allen, Michael Blundell, and Scott Bellafiore. And we're talking contracts today, and of course, the Jays face a unique situation, and it starts with Edwin Encarnacion. He voiced that he would like a contract done by opening day, and although spring training has been hampered by injuries, he's voiced his displeasure in the situation, saying that he doesn't see himself as a part of the Jays' future. But John, should he be?
I think he should, Sean. Listen, Edwin Encarnacion is one of the best hitters in the MLB. Not to mention that over the past 4 years, he's averaged 38 home runs. He's hit 274 over the last 3 seasons. Of course, his on-base percentage and his slugging percentage have both gone up. He's not regressing. In fact, he's getting better, so I do think he warrants an extension.
Yeah, John, despite that offensive production, though, he's still a defensive liability, and what we're seeing with Justin Smoak and Chris Colabello when they play first base is defensive reliability, and they've also brought in a little bit of an offensive upswing. So for them, I think this is an opportunity for the Blue Jays just to spend that money elsewhere.
You nailed it right there, Mike. Edwin is a lot more replaceable than a guy like Jose Bautista, and it's because of his long-term durability issues and his age. Right now, at 33 years old and playing designated hitter, Edwin should not be part of the Blue Jays' future.
Now, obviously, the other piece is Jose Bautista, and he hasn't necessarily set a deadline, but he does expect a big raise, and he's not going to take a hometown discount this year. Now, Jose has proven himself again and again over his career, but this year, under new management, does he have something new to prove in order to stay in Toronto?
No, not at all. He's been the focus of this Jays team since 2010, and really, with the 227 home runs, top 10 in the AL in walks the past 2 seasons, you combine that, guys, with his superior defense, that cannon of an arm in right field, he has nothing left to prove in 2016 for me.
But look, unfortunately for Jose Bautista, baseball is a what have you done for me lately kind of sport. And of course, there's a new regime, and this is a new set of eyes. They know what he's done for the last 5 years, but he's going to have to prove himself once more, and I think the spotlight's going to be on Jose Bautista this year.
Bautista's value exceeds what he brings on the field. Yes, he has those power numbers, but he's a lovable character off of it. The fans love him here in Toronto. The players love him in the clubhouse as well. So I think it would be a huge mistake for Mark Shapiro and his group not to bring him back.
Well, I think an ideal situation would be for the Jays to bring back both Edwin and Bautista. However, doing so would put the Jays in the top 5 payroll next year, which is not necessarily a bad thing, but most of that money is allocated in just 6 players, $125 million. Is that a bad thing?
Well, you wouldn't think so at first. The Jays playing in the Rogers Center offense first. They put a lot of their money in the infield, but really they didn't address the top of that rotation and the back of the bullpen. Too many depth guys and not enough frontline starters and relievers.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with the pitching. This is a big concern for this team. You could have 4 starters here with an ERA close to 4, and that's just not good enough heading into the regular season. And also, Marcus Stroman's going to have to prove himself as an ace.
When you average 5.5 runs a game, your philosophy has to be offense, and that's what the Blue Jays have done. Anthopoulos built it. Now Shapiro has to continue it.
Well, you're right. Shapiro and management definitely have a lot of tough decisions to make in the future, but you can be rest assured that come opening day, the Jays will be focused on returning to the postseason.
While Alex Anthopoulos was busy at the trade deadline preparing his team for a deep playoff run, fans in Toronto were expressing concern about how the Blue Jays would fare moving forward. Then Marcus Stroman made a comeback that solidified the Jays' rotation, while Roberto Osuna and Aaron Sanchez became 2 of the best young arms in all of baseball. And as Mark Horner tells us, this is just the beginning.
Last season saw the Blue Jays trade many of the club's high-value pitching prospects. Despite those trades, the Blue Jays at the major league level are rich in talented young arms. Marcus Stroman tore the ACL in his left knee March 10th. He then rehabbed and trained with an elite staff at Duke University, and it all paid off. Stroman returned in September and compiled a 4-0 record, a 1.67 ERA, and 18 strikeouts in 27 innings pitched. He also earned invaluable postseason experience, making 2 starts against the Rangers and 1 against the Royals. Stroman is now pitching without a brace on his repaired knee and has dominated this spring, all while showcasing his 6-pitch arsenal. Following Stroman's injury in spring training, Aaron Sanchez started 2015 as the team's 5th starter. He was placed on the disabled list in June, and when Sanchez returned, he was put in the bullpen, where he was fantastic as the 8th-inning setup man for the remainder of the season. After adding 25 pounds of muscle this offseason, Sanchez appears destined for the final spot in the 2016 starting rotation, something friend Marcus Stroman knows is the right decision.
He's ready, and I'm excited for y'all to see him in spring because we've made some huge gains, and he's in a good position.
Roberto Osuna was not expected to be a part of the 2015 Blue Jays squad, but an outstanding spring training earned him a roster spot. Osuna emerged as one of the most reliable bullpen arms on the team, eventually taking over the closer's role for the majority of the season. He finished the year with 20 saves, a 2.58 ERA, and 75 strikeouts in 69 2/3 innings pitched. During the division series against the Rangers, Osuna recorded a 5-out save in the 5th and final game, and in doing so became the youngest pitcher in American League history to record a save in the postseason. After a promising 2015, expectations are much higher for these 3 this year. Marcus Stroman is counted upon as the ace of this staff and will go head-to-head against the team's better pitcher more often. If Aaron Sanchez is in the starting rotation, his difference in velocity from more off-speed focused members such as Estrada and Dickey will be key. And Roberto Osuna is in the closer role or the 8th-inning setup man role this year in a bullpen that will go a long way in determining the success of this team. From Toronto, Mark Horner.
Stick around. We'll arm you with what you need to know about the Jays' pitching situation this season and who will be the face of the franchise moving forward. We've got more taking flight on the other side. Welcome back. Lance, this Toronto lineup is simply packed full of talent, but who would you consider to be the team's franchise players?
Well, Rodney, it's really hard to label one or two guys with that distinction, considering that Donaldson and Tulowitzki are locked up, and they've got some great arms on that pitching staff in Sanchez, Osuna, and Stroman.
Well, to help narrow that down for us, we'll turn things over to a few more of our baseball connoisseurs.
Thank you. I'm Saif Ahmed here with Tyler Van Bagel, Sean Lavery, and Jordan Fusa. The Blue Jays finally made the playoffs after a 22-year drought. There were some tremendous performances on both sides of the ball. As we take a look at this deep roster for the Jays, can you guys pinpoint maybe one person as being the franchise player?
Yes, if you have to look at third baseman Josh Donaldson, he gets it done offensively and he gets it done on the defensive side too. He hit out 41 home runs for the Jays last year and made routine plays at third base barehanded that no one else in the MLB could do. And on top of all that, if that's not enough, he did win the AL MVP. And he gets the energy going in the clubhouse, and that's why he's the Toronto Blue Jays franchise player.
Well, I don't disagree with you, Tyler. He is an amazing player. He absolutely deserved the AL MVP this year, and he does bring a lot of energy to the team, but I don't think anyone brought energy to the team quite like Jose Bautista did in Game 5 of that ALDS when he flipped his bat to the moon. And I got to say that he is definitely this team's franchise player. Josh Donaldson's only been here for a year. Jose Bautista has been here since 2008, and he's been crushing homers on a routine basis since then.
Well, you guys both kind of mentioned that energy factor, and to me, the guy that's the franchise player is the one with the most passion. That is Marcus Stroman. No one brings more energy and charisma to this ball club than Stroman, so he has that whole personality side of a franchise player, and he also has the skill on the field. He went 4-0 with an ERA under 2 in the regular season, and he pitched pretty well in the playoffs when you consider he came off that devastating knee injury. Now with David Price down in Boston, the onus of ace is on the 24-year-old Stroman, which is a huge responsibility for such a young guy. That just speaks about how the Blue Jays trust Stroman. They trust him enough. He's my franchise player.
Yeah, Stroman finally looking to stay healthy and get a full season in with the Jays for the first time. I mean, injuries do happen, though. They're part of the game. Do you see one of these guys that the Blue Jays cannot afford to lose for an extended period of time?
Yeah, Steve, you got to go back to Josh Donaldson. He's the third baseman, and you don't have a replacement for him at third base. Even if you did have one, it wouldn't be anything what he can do during the regular season with all the home runs and all the crazy things he does on the field. There's no one that can replace Josh Donaldson, so they cannot afford to lose him for a long period of time.
Well, I'm going to go with the opening day starter, Marcus Stroman. When you consider that the biggest knack on the Blue Jays is that their pitching staff is already thin, to lose their best arm, that would obviously be a huge blow to the Blue Jays. They can't afford to lose Marcus Stroman for an extended period of time.
Well, you definitely can't lose a pitcher, but I'm going to have to go off the board here and say that you can't afford to lose center fielder Kevin Pillar. He is the captain of your outfield. He's the guy who's making all the calls on who takes what ball, and I don't really trust his replacement, Dalton Pompey, to come in and do what Kevin Pillar is able to do. We saw his greatness last season. We know how good he is. You definitely can't afford to lose him for an extended period of time.
Another player we did not mention was Troy Tulowitzki. He's an MVP caliber player, and look for him to have a bounce back here in 2016 in what should be another fascinating season for the Toronto Blue Jays.
During the 2012 offseason, the Blue Jays acquired that year's NL Cy Young winner, R.A. Dickey. But just like his knuckleball, Dickey's numbers didn't necessarily end up where he'd expected. He finished his first year as a Blue Jay with an ERA above 4, and the team, well, they finished dead last in the division. Since then, the knuckleballers improved significantly, and as Colton Prale explains, even at 41 years old, the 13-year veteran continues to chase perfection.
R.A. Dickey's quest for perfection starts with consistency. The Blue Jays veteran hurler has spent an impressive 13 seasons in the majors, but still finds himself struggling off the hop, and it's not just a mental hurdle. During Dickey's stint in Toronto, he's walked a total 206 batters. 87 of those came in the first 2 months of each season. That's a whopping 42% of his career walks as a Jay in a span of 6 months. It's affecting his record. Dickey is 14-20 in that time, and he knows his lack of control has been costly.
When I don't walk people, I usually have good results.
Last year, Dickey tried changing up his off-season regime so that he would hopefully hit his stride by April, but it didn't work out. Now, Dickey is focusing on coming into the season as prepared as possible, both physically and tactically.
So I'm just trying to be as lean and as light and as strong as I can, and just in control of my mechanic as best I can.
Mechanic. It's a word that has found its way into his vocabulary more frequently of late. To hear him speak of it, Dickey isn't polishing off a masterpiece, he's taking a hammer to the marble.
I think the number one thing that I care about at this point is, are all three of the pitches that I mainly throw come out of my hand in the strike zone and stay in a strike for a long amount of time, and the answer to that is yes right now.
He has indeed taken a hammer to the marble. Dickey dropped 12 pounds in the offseason and underwent knee surgery, all in an effort to improve his consistency and his starts. Dickey hasn't had an ERA under 5 in the first 2 months of his season since 2012, but if he could replicate the feat this year, the Jays might finally see the pitcher that they traded for. From Toronto, Colton Prale.
Just a month after being eliminated by the Royals, Toronto fans were faced with the realization that Mark Burley wouldn't be back and that David Price was shipping up to Boston. Our baseball experts tell us now who will fill the void left by a couple of all-star lefties.
Thanks, I'm Eli Billen. Beside me today, Dale Manuktuk, Caroline Anderson, Pat Gregoire. And guys, Marcus Stroman, R.A. Dickey, Marco Estrada, and J.A. Happ. That's pretty much the guys that we can guarantee as the 4 starters for the Toronto Blue Jays. But there's still one question mark up in the air, that 5th spot. Who's going to land in that spot, Dale?
I think it's going to be Aaron Sanchez, but I don't believe my opinion matters because Mark Shapiro already said that it's most likely going to be Gavin Floyd when he was on Sportsnet, the Fan 590, talking to Jeff Blair. But I think Aaron Sanchez deserves it. You're talking about a guy who pitched 11 games last year. They only hit .237 against them, and the team is familiar with him. You can't measure how comfort factors into situations like this.
I think the Jays need the veteran presence of Gavin Floyd. He's a guy obviously coming off back-to-back elbow injuries, but he's somebody who came into training camp proving that he wants to be that reliable guy he once was in Chicago. Came in with 20 extra pounds of muscle, new diet, new training regimen. This is a guy who wants to prove that he can be that pitcher he once was.
Now, I agree with Caroline there, as in I think Gavin Floyd's going to start the year, but I don't necessarily agree with the move. I think Aaron Sanchez has proven himself that he's ready to be a starter in the major leagues. But with that being said, it's the durability that seems to be a huge issue with the Blue Jays brass. But also on the other side, you look at it, he was really solid in the bullpen at the end of last year when he came back from injury. So it's more of a testament how strong, how much they believe in him to being able to shut down the late innings.
Well, it's so tough, right? Because you mentioned the 130 innings, and this is the difference between the eye test and the Moneyball thing. And I think you got to drop the analytics for a little bit because it's like going into an interview and people say to you, you don't have enough experience. But when are they going to give you the experience in order to have enough to get the job?
Yeah, and whoever gets that 5th and starting role is going to have something to prove, but other guys have stuff to prove. Marcus Stroman only played 4 games last year. J.A. Happ had a good stint in Pittsburgh, but struggled with Seattle. And then you also have Marco Estrada. He's only pitched 1 good season. Who has the most to prove for this Blue Jays pitching staff?
I think it's a guy that you didn't even mention there in Drew Hutchison. I think he's going to be an opening day starter once again, but down the QEW in Buffalo with the Bison. But that doesn't mean that it's all over for Drew Hutchison. I think if he has a solid start down in AAA, can then come up when they do need him, because let's be honest, they're going to need more than 5 starting pitchers throughout the year. He could come up and then maybe down the road turn into a little bit of a long relief role.
I think somebody who has the most to prove is Marcus Stroman. He came out and he said he wanted to be the team's ace. He became a fan favorite last year. Obviously has never pitched a complete season in the major leagues, but this is a guy who holds himself to incredibly high standards, and he can surpass them.
Yeah, Marcus Stroman has smashed expectations, Caroline. So I agree with you. I think it's Marcus Stroman, and that's in terms of quantity. He's got the most to prove in terms of being the starting pitcher for the Jays, their ace, pitching a full 162, being one of the faces of the majors, and I think he has all the tools necessary.
Yeah, well, no matter what, the whole pitching rotation is going to have something to prove because pitching is the one thing that a lot of people are holding back from the Toronto Blue Jays to win another AL East title.
The Blue Jays finally ended their long postseason drought, due in large part to the moves made by general manager Alex Anthopoulos. However, with AA no longer in the mix, Ross Atkins and Mark Shapiro face mounting pressure from a fan base that got its first taste of the postseason in 22 years. Jack Weber gives us some insight into the Jays' new look.
While there's usually a grace period for new management, Blue Jays president Mark Shapiro doesn't have the luxury of a patient fan base behind him. Many were devastated when GM Alex Anthopoulos decided not to re-sign in Toronto, saying after Shapiro took over that he didn't think it was the right fit. Anthopoulos had just given many Jays fans the ride of their life in 2015, pulling off one blockbuster trade after another, engineering Toronto's first playoff berth since 1993, and a dramatic run to Game 6 of the ALCS. Shapiro was vilified among fans, being viewed as the man who chased Anthopoulos away. But despite the rocky beginning, Shapiro still believes he has an incredible opportunity in front of him.
My feelings and my priorities that are top of mind. Number one, what an incredibly exciting time to be joining the Blue Jays organization. To watch baseball play out here last summer, to watch through the lens of a shaking camera, as this building pulsated.
Many also felt that Anthopoulos' departure left John Gibbons as a lame duck manager. However, Shapiro insisted that's not the case and offered high praise for Gibbons' work with the team.
John did an outstanding job, and we're extremely happy to have him back next year. In addition, Tony's already reached out to every single staff member of the team. They are all invited back, and we hope to have them back intact next year as well. We expect to.
Shapiro inherits a team that looks poised to win this season, but it might take some creativity to keep the team contending beyond this year. The Jays have several key pending free agents, most notably Jose Bautista and Edwin Encarnacion, and a depleted farm system after trading for the likes of Josh Donaldson, Troy Tulowitzki, and David Price. If Shapiro is intent on winning over the fans, perhaps the best way to do that would be by figuring out a way to keep a contender in Toronto for 2016 and beyond. From Toronto, I'm Jack Weber.
Some baseball managers are fiery. Some can best be described as reserved, while others a little more relaxed. And then there's John Gibbons. The man is so laid back, he literally does his post-game interviews while leaning back. Chris Pimentel has more on the Bluebirds' bench boss and his status with the club moving forward.
In 2015, Blue Jays manager John Gibbons could do no wrong.
And the Blue Jays can celebrate their first division title in 22 years.
Not only did he help end the playoff drought, he also took a simplistic approach to the ever-evolving game.
Pretty simple business if you get down to it. Those guys that got all those complicated answers, I'm kidding you.
Gibbons has the second most wins as a manager in franchise history, behind only Cito Gaston. They share a laid-back attitude towards a star-studded team and also led an offensive juggernaut. That's probably why new management has faith in him.
John Gibbons will be back to manage this team next year. I think his strength, his toughness, his consistency were the hand that this club needed to ensure that they had the year they had.
He's known for his fiery ejections, but also has a laid-back attitude. It's a contradiction that's only helped the Jays. Gone are the days of player outbursts with the manager because Gibbons has evolved into more of a relaxed man. That seems to be the recipe that has allowed the Jays to become Toronto's star team in 2016.
We caught fire and everybody got caught up in it, and you know, we came up one step short. We'd like to finish that off.
After coming off the best season of his career, John Gibbons decided to take the rollout option out of his contract. It's a bit of a risk, however, because new management can move on from him if the Jays struggle this season. From Toronto, Chris Pimentel.
Coming up on Taking Flight, we answer 3 burning questions. How will the Jays' new management and John Gibbons build the team for 2016? Which Jays prospects to keep an eye out for? And what improvements have been made at the Rogers Center? It wasn't long ago Jays fans were calling for the firing of John Gibbons. Now a pitching staff filled with young talent and one of the most explosive lineups in the American League has renewed their faith in the Jays bench boss. Now their focus has shifted to how the front office will develop this team for the future. Here's our panel to break down what to expect from new management and how they'll work with Gibbons for the upcoming season.
Thank you so much. I'm here with Matt Cullen, Dalton Finkbeiner, and Khalil Hassan Ali. Let's start with the biggest move the Jays made in the offseason, saying goodbye to Alex Anthopoulos. What does this mean for the Jays?
Well, Holly, Alex Anthopoulos brought a really unique approach to the GM position. He was very aggressive, and during his tenure with the Blue Jays, he made a ton of trades. He traded for Ari Dickey, he traded for Josh Donaldson, and he traded for Troy Tulowitzki. So I think Blue Jays fans especially are going to miss that aggressive approach in the front office.
Alex Anthopoulos came into the Blue Jays GM position in 2009, and he increased payroll by $51 million and only had one playoff appearance to show for it. Now you look at teams like the Orioles and the Pirates, they were able to do a lot more with a lot less. So you can't blame Rogers' management for wanting to make a change.
Now, speaking of change, there were a lot of questions around the status of John Gibbons. What were the Blue Jays going to do with him? But new management answered those questions very quickly and now has a new contract.
Well, speaking of Gibbons, the Blue Jays reworked his contract, eliminating the rollover clause in exchange for a bump in salary. Does this change things, though, for Gibbons? Is he still the right man for the job?
Yeah, absolutely he is. There's no change here, and this really isn't new. This is a reward for Gibbons. He has a chance now to go prove himself. If the Jays can get their hands on another AL East title or get them back in the playoffs again, that will go a long way for Gibbons in negotiating a new deal. Talking about leverage here. But if the Blue Jays miss the playoffs,
that could be trouble, and Gibbons might not have a job.
He's really hedging a bet on himself that he will perform and earn a new contract with a management group that did inherit him. Now, he's in a unique situation in Toronto where he's always criticized for moves that are deemed to be wrong, but he's never given enough credit for moves that are deemed to be right.
I think one of the reasons he is criticized is because of his laid-back approach to managing. Gibbons is more of a hands-off manager. There's a ton of personality on this Blue Jays team with Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista, and Edwin Encarnacion. So I think his laid-back attitude is perfect for this ball club.
Okay, switching focus now to the front office. What's Shapiro and Atkins done so far in Toronto in their short time, and what can fans expect moving forward?
Well, Shapiro comes in with a lot of pedigree, two-time executive of the year. Now, they're not really clamoring to the fan base of Toronto, not signing Edwin Encarnacion and Jose Bautista as of yet, and they took an AL MVP in Josh Donaldson to arbitration. You don't see that very often.
Yeah, I think we're quickly seeing the different style of this managing group, and I think that is conservative. I don't think they're going to be involved in as many big-time deals as they were last year, so I think Jays fans can expect a lot less moves than last season.
But he has made a couple of moves so far. Again, shipping out Ben Revere for Drew Storen. I like the move. It gives the bullpen a ton more flexibility, and we may even see Aaron Sanchez start now. But I bet too, guys, if the Blue Jays are in contention, we'll see a couple of moves made at the deadline.
Well, it's an exciting season ahead. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Back to you.
Toronto's acquisitions last summer came at a cost, mainly in the form of the franchise's future arms. So is the cupboard completely bare, or there's still a few surprises along the way? Insider Carlisle Fazette joins me now. Carlisle, last July the Jays traded away 10 pitching prospects. So is there any young talent left coming the way of the Jays in the future from the mound?
Yeah, well, Alex Anthopoulos didn't leave a whole lot in the cupboard when it comes to prospects, but one name to keep an eye on is Connor Green. He's the top pitching prospect the Jays have right now. He's got a 6'3", lanky build. If you add some muscle to that, he could challenge for a spot in the rotation a little bit down the road. During spring training, he was hitting upper 90s with his fastball. He's spent most of his time last year in Single-A and Double-A. This year, he'll be with Buffalo and Triple-A for the most part, but with injuries, there's always a chance we could see him at some point this season with the big club.
Who else do you think could make some steps towards joining the Jays in the near future?
Yeah, I think of a guy like Anthony Alford in the outfield. He was a third-round choice back in 2012 for the Blue Jays. He's got a lot of raw, freakish athletic ability, and that comes from years of him playing football. And if he gets that power into his game, he really could be seen as a realistic replacement for someone like Jose Bautista. He's a highly regarded prospect in terms of Baseball America's top 100. He's actually ranked number 25. He spent most of his time last year in Single-A and Double-A. He'll definitely get some looks at the Triple-A level in Buffalo this season.
The Jays' left side of the infield is as good as any in the majors, but management seems to be well aware of the fact that Tulowitzki and Donaldson are both on the other side of 30. They seem to have a bit of a contingency plan there too now, don't they?
Yeah, I think of a guy like Richard Urena as the heir apparent to shortstop Troy Tulowitzki, and that's actually coming from John Gibbons himself. He's an excellent defensive player. He's a switch hitter, although he is more powerful from the left side. Of his 16 home runs last year, 15 of them came from the left side of the plate. For a young player, he's patient, but he could work on just being a little bit more patient at the plate. That'll make him a bit more effective. And he was recently sent down, along with Alford, to Single-A Dunedin, but I expect him to move up the ranks fairly quickly.
Thanks for doing this, Carlisle.
Thanks, Rodney.
When the Blue Jays made the move to Skydome in 1989, it was the most expensive stadium in the majors when construction costs reached nearly $600 million. A stadium in the heart of downtown with a retractable roof was about the best thing that fans could ask for. Now, the stadium's considered outdated, and despite numerous improvements to the artificial turf, it's still a contributing factor for injuries to Blue Jays players past and present. Mike DeCourcy deconstructs the improvements being made to the Rogers Center.
There is no sport more romanticized than the game of baseball. Imagine Wrigley, Fenway, and Yankee Stadium with AstroTurf. It's like a Warhol painting in the Sistine Chapel. Ever since the Blue Jays entered the MLB in 1977, the team has played its home games on AstroTurf, with dirt box cutouts around home plate and the bases called sliding pits. Multi-purpose stadiums were the rage in the 1970s and 80s. It started with Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium in 1970. It changed the way the game was played, with more emphasis on speed. But it also took a toll on players' bodies. When the Jays moved from Exhibition Stadium to the Rogers Center in 1989, it was a huge step in what the team had been playing on for close to 12 years. Called the eighth wonder of the world, it was the gold standard. Shortly after, baseball no longer wanted to share their home with football teams and began constructing retro-style parks that were more intimate, not gigantic concrete structures. Soon, Toronto fans wanted the same, and at the top of the list was grass and a dirt infield. The problem was the Jays had a tenant, the Toronto Argonauts. With the Argos desiring a smaller venue for their product this upcoming season, the Jays saw their opening.
So we had that opportunity now where we know we can keep it into baseball mode for the baseball season. So it was, this was really the only year that we could actually do this.
The traditional diamond shape wasn't the only change.
In the summer months when it's really hot, you have a situation where that clay dries out really quick. So one of the things we wanted to make sure is we had a good base to start with.
The next step is moving from field turf to natural grass. The Jays hope to have this surface in place by the 2018 season. With the team playing a portion of their games with the dome closed, the club has turned here to the University of Guelph to try and find a species that can grow in artificial light. After 40 years for Blue Jays fans, what's old is new. Isn't that romantic? From Guelph, Mike DeCourcy.
More Taking Flight coming up.
9 on the field, 16 on the bench, 15 in the minors. There's only so much teams can do to boost a 40-man roster. If they add one piece, they have to subtract another. What if a team took a new approach, though? Instead of improving their roster one piece at a time, they improved each and every one on it. Jamie McIsaac takes us inside of a revolutionary new program and the advantages it may bring to the Blue Jays.
The new high-performance department implemented by Mark Shapiro and Angus Mugford this offseason will be a game-changer for the Blue Jays. It's a player-centered program designed to integrate all aspects of a player's performance under one umbrella, from strength and conditioning to nutrition, as well as mental health and injury rehab. The ultimate goal, of course, is to get the absolute most out of players on the field and, in turn, to win.
It represented an opportunity to both gain a competitive advantage and to make a cultural statement that our players are at the center of everything we do, that will spare no resource possible to help them perform at their peak performance and be on the field.
All of those resources, with sports science at the helm of that to help us inform decisions around each individual.
But each Blue Jay has his own unique set of needs, both physical and mental. So with the information gathered over time, Mugford's department will aim to tailor a specific plan for every player in order to establish their goals.
It's just great that we have people that want to help us and that want to teach us new things and give us direction in order to maybe extend our careers or help us perform at our highest level on the field.
Now, this program has been implemented by many professional teams, especially at the national level with Olympic athletes, but it has been slow to catch on throughout the majors. However, that should not come as a surprise, as baseball has been traditionally slow at adopting new ways of thinking and improving the game. From Toronto, I'm Jamie McIsaac.
Before the trade deadline, the Blue Jays were, well, just another way to spend a Tuesday night with your buddies. Afterwards, they became the hottest ticket in town. TV ratings went through the roof, ticket sales quadrupled, and merchandise flew off the shelves from coast to coast. Now that opening day is upon us, Luca Celebre shed some light on the anticipation that's been building all winter long.
It's truly incredible what kind of effect the power of winning has on a city and its fan base. Although the Blue Jays didn't win the World Series last season, they laid the groundwork to reestablish a winning culture that's been absent for over 20 years. Despite some key losses in the offseason like Alex Anthopoulos and David Price, the 2016 Jays squad is still full of charisma, character, and talent, which has Toronto fans extremely excited for the upcoming season.
I'm excited to see if we can win a World Series this year. We definitely have the team to do it.
With the excitement they had last year, with the whole Game 5 against Texas, with the bat flip and the excitement, how can't you be excited?
This is definitely another year we have a chance to win it all. So enjoying the big team we'll have out there, because I don't know how long it's going to last.
Success for Toronto's major sports teams has been hard to come by since the Blue Jays won back-to-back titles in '92 and '93. After the magical run the team had last season, though, it's understandable that the expectations and pressure for this season from not only Torontonians, but from this entire country as a whole, has increased significantly.
Being in Toronto, it's not been a winning city. We finally have a team that's a favorite to win, and I think the fans are really going to be embracing it.
We're finally good again, and we have the team to really win a championship, and everyone's really excited about that.
We're Canada's team here, so we need to stay strong and show America that Canada is serious about baseball too.
I think Toronto needs a team to win something. So they were our last hope.
While optimism is in the air for the 2016 season, it can all go away in an instant. According to the Blue Jays, the team sold out just 7 home games before their final 21 home contests of the season, further proving the age-old adage correct, that winning isn't everything, it's the only thing. From Toronto, I'm Luca Celebre.
For decades, Toronto has been caught in one of the most competitive divisions in all of baseball, and this season boasts to be no different. For their thoughts on how 2016 will play out, we turn to our experts of the AL East.
Thanks, I'm Carl Alvazette, and I'm joined by Simon Wells, Matthew Lewis, and Hannah Nordman. And as we look at this 2016 season for the Blue Jays and what they can build on from last year, it's really important to look at the rest of the division. And Simon, let's start with the New York Yankees, the other team from the AL East to rep in the postseason. Last year, they lost in the wild card round to Houston.
Well, since the beginning of free agency in 1975, this is the first year that the Yankees have not gone out and bought any players. Instead, they went and traded for one of the best closers in baseball in Aroldis Chapman and Starlin Castro, the shortstop, who's got the most hits at that position in the last 5 years. Biggest problem with this team is going to be their starting rotation. The health of Masahiro Tanaka and the consistency of Michael Pineda will determine how legitimate a shot the Yankees actually have at the AL East title.
For the Tampa Bay Rays, the rotation is definitely not going to be a problem. They have Chris Archer, who was top 5 in AL Cy Young voting last year, but the problem for them is going to be, where are they going to find that offense? They acquired Corey Dickerson from the Colorado Rockies in the offseason, and in his last full season, he got 24 home runs in 2014. I think this team is on the cusp of competing for the title, but they're just not there yet.
And if we know one thing about the Baltimore Orioles, it's that they're going to be hitting a boatload of home runs this year. The 2 newest weapons in their arsenal being Mark Trumbo and Pedro Alvarez. But one thing that lineup has struggled with is their on-base percentage. Another struggle is their rotation. I just don't see them being strong enough to get past 3 of the top 4 scoring teams in the Blue Jays, the Yankees, and the Red Sox.
Well, speaking of the Red Sox, you've got 5 of the last 6 seasons they've missed the playoffs, and that meant big changes. In other words, lots of money being spent, and that beneficiary was David Price, who Toronto fans are very familiar with. Plus, there's no possible way that Pablo Sandoval and Hanley Ramirez could be as bad as they were last season. Well, now shifting back to the Toronto Blue Jays and their shot at a second consecutive AL East title. What has to go right for them to have another title this season?
Well, with the improvements to the rest of the division, I find it hard to believe the Jays are going to repeat this year. I see their win total being whittled down from 93 to around 87, but I also see the other wildcard teams in the American League coming from the West and coming from the Central. Those Texas teams look so good this year. Detroit and Kansas City in the Central look dominant as well. So if the Jays don't repeat as AL East champions, I find it hard to see them back in the postseason again.
I just find it hard to imagine a team this good, these Blue Jays, not playing a single playoff game this year. You predicted 87 wins for this team, and that was enough for the Yankees last year to get into that one-game wildcard playoff against the Astros. So I'm seeing at least one playoff game in their future this year.
I just think this team is too gifted offensively not to win the AL East title. And I mean, when I look at this team, I see resiliency, being able to battle through adversity in individual games and in the season. And I think if they can play consistently from the beginning to the end, they'll definitely be in good position to get a second consecutive AL East title.
Well, it's been 20 years, but finally the Blue Jays have a division title to defend. Back to you.
Lance, I'm old enough to remember Timlin's flip to first and the joy that brought me as a kid.
Oh yeah, and for me it's Joe Carter touching them all just a year later in '93.
I'm sure glad too now for that generation that followed us. They now have Jose Bautista's bat flip as that touchstone moment to really hang on to.
I like that touchstone. Man, the hype and the anticipation surrounding opening day this year, it's really unlike anything since the early 90s.
Should be an exciting year and we look forward to that. I'm Rodney Heemstra.
And I'm Lance Phillips. Thanks for watching Taking Flight.